This is an exclusive excerpt from the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
It's time for another retro interview with a celebrity that is no longer with us. Over the last 25 years or so, I've had the pleasure to talk with some great stars of the past. This time around, it's a chat that I had back in March of 1994. The star was born Christian Rudolph Ebsen Jr., but we knew him best as Buddy. And he's best known for his role as Jed Clampett on the Beverly Hillbillies and as Detective Barnaby Jones. At the time that we spoke, he was promoting his just-released autobiography. It was called The Other Side of Oz, a title that brings reference to the fact that he was originally cast as the Tin Woodsman in The Wizard of Oz. At the time that we talked, Buddy was just a month shy of his 86th birthday. Here is just a part of that hour-long interview now.
I guess we should start right at the top and talk about your book and the title. I'm sure people by now are familiar with the story, but for those who are not, tell us about your recollections of that movie, which you should have been in, but unfortunately were not.
Well, I was in it for 10 days.
It's true, yeah.
And then, because I was playing the Tin Woodman, they powdered me with aluminum dust, and it got into my lungs, and I got instant emphysema. And it was pretty serious, so I was replaced. And the book, it recalls those days, but that's not what it's entirely about. It's about my life in show business since 1928 when I first came to New York.
You've had a very long and illustrious career. Touching on that Oz situation just for a little bit, I guess people are familiar with the fact that you were to play the Tin Woodsman, but if you go back a little further, I understand you actually wanted to play the role of the Scarecrow.
Well, I was tabbed for the role of Scarecrow, and then they shifted me to the Tin Woodman because a very natural Scarecrow dancer came on a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I was fine in the Tin Woodman until the makeup. And, of course, the tin suit was a problem too because they had never made a tin suit before, and I luckily survived the whole ordeal.
You were almost like a guinea pig in that movie, the way they tested you.
Yes.
Yeah, and all the work you had to go through before you even shot any of the footage. And I understand that there is actually a possibility that you might actually be in that film.
Well, I think that after they replaced me, they discovered that you couldn't recognize who was in the suit at a certain distance. So I think that in order to save film, they just used some of the existing stuff.
So some of the footage, for instance, like when you're all skipping down the yellow brick road, that might actually be you?
That could be, yes.
And I understand you might actually be on the soundtrack too.
Well, I think I actually am. I think they definitely identified me on the soundtrack. When we're off to see the Wizard, the Wonderful Wizard of Oz. You know that song?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, again, for a large part of the population, the baby boomer generation and up, they might not even know you as a song and dance man. They know you as either Jed Clampett or Barnaby Jones.
That's true. Some of the younger folks don't know that I started out as a song and dance man in New York in Broadway shows in the late 20s and early 30s. And I still do that. I play in Branson and places with my act, and I do singing, dancing, and jokes.
How did you get into this whole song and dance and acting routine? Because I understand you were actually a pre-med student?
I was. I wanted to be a doctor, but ran out of money. When the Florida boom collapsed, and that's where we lived. And so my father was a dancing teacher. And unlike the shoemaker's children, all his children did not go barefoot. They learned a trade. Mm-hmm. And so it was a trade I fell back on and decided to go to New York and see how far I could get.
Now, the most, I guess, the strongest part of your career through the whole years you've been around in entertainment has to have been television. But
yes, it was almost like it was invented to sell Ebsen. I don't act and project on broad lines, and this supplied a certain intimacy that seemed to communicate to a multitude of people.
Well, the reason why I asked that question is because when you first went into show business, television wasn't even around. So what were your goals? Did you want to go to Broadway? Did you want to go into movies?
I just wanted to keep working.
Well, you've done that very successfully for a long period of time.
Yes, I've been blessed.
How did you get the role of Jed Clampett, which you played for 9 years?
Well, the writer, Paul Henning, had the theory that most successful series were built around a tall man, and I qualified. So that was instrumental in the first moves toward getting the part.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but from most of your career, before Jed Clampett and before Barnaby Jones, you played second bananas or sidekicks or the hero's best friend, stuff like that. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just didn't have a leading man's nose. You have to have a straight, sort of, heroic sort of a nose. Mine was, I had a sidekick's nose.
So was it a surprise to you later in life that you started getting the lead?
Yes. It was a pleasant surprise. Somehow the lead gets more respect on the set than anyone else. I enjoyed it.
I understand. I heard a story talking about bumping you around from role to role, from the Scarecrow to the Tin Man, and unfortunately out, that even when you did Davy Crockett, you were hoping to play Davy?
Originally, there was for about 2 minutes I was supposed to be Davy, and then Disney saw Fess Parker in a 2-minute role in a picture called Them. It was about giant ants. And he said, that's Davy Crockett. So it was quite painful for a few days until they decided that Davy had a friend, and I was a friend, Georgie Russell.
Talking about your dancing, you had a chance to dance with Shirley Temple.
Yes, I did.
Now,
that was quite an experience. At the age of 6, she had the aplomb and the poise and the intelligence of a grown-up.
Now, that was certainly a difference at that time, a difference in height.
Yes, well, we cured that by having her, lifting her up on this big sort of hogshead tub and dancing around it with her on reducing the disparity in her height.
Mm-hmm. That was the movie, I guess, Captain January?
That's right.
At a time when a lot of people are taking it easy and slowing down, you sign up for a television show that runs another 7 years, Barnaby Jones.
Yeah, it was only supposed to run half a season, but it fooled them.
It was only supposed to run a half a season?
Pardon?
It was only supposed to run a half of...
It was really concocted in a hurry to replace an hour that fell out on the CBS programming.
Mm-hmm.
So they figured, it was only good for 13 weeks.
Had you
But the ratings, were so, good and unpredictable, they were afraid to cancel it.
Had you known that it was going to go on for 7 years, would you have been willing to sign up?
Sure. It was fun doing. I mean, I didn't have to put on much makeup. I was more or less myself, and it was very comfortable.
Most of the people had known you, as of course, by that point, from Jed Clampett, and before that, a song and dance man, also on Davy Crockett. This was quite of a change. You had done musical comedy, you had done comedy. Weren't they worried about you being typecast as Jed Clampett? What would Jed Clampett be doing as a detective?
As I said, Barnaby Jones was more naturally me than Jed. I characterized more as Jed Clampett, so it was easy to make the transition.
Since you say most people think of you as Jed Clampett, do you find that sometimes is difficult? They meet you and they think you are Jed Clampett? They expect you to be Jed Clampett?
No, I just give them a big grin and forget all about that and say, hiya, buddy, Okay. I have no problem with switching roles socially.
There are so many books out there that come out from actors, written either by them or about them, and a lot of times you hear stories about people who have books, and they're relatively young. You have had such a vast career, such a long career, yet you waited till now to write this book. Why now?
Well, I was gathering notes. I really didn't have time. But my mother, when I started out into the world, she said, son, you're going to meet a lot of interesting folks out there, so why don't you just jot down notes about them and things that you do, and then one day you will write a book. So I've been all this time collecting material, and finally the opportunity came. I was approached by Donovan Publishing to publish publish my book. And so I got everything together, and there it is.
Through the entire run of the Beverly Hillbillies, people have said, as even though so many people love watching the show on the air, and it's reflected in the ratings, there were those who knocked it. Critics knocked it, saying that it was idiotic or it was moronic. How did you take to the criticism of the show?
Well, when it was first reviewed, there were 19 critics who said it was, quote, corny, unquote. And so I wrote letters thanking him for the reviews and asking him what corny means. And how many letters do you think I got back?
None?
Nobody could really identify the word. And to me, corny means the emotions that you feel when the big chips are down, like when a child is sick or, when you're in deep trouble. And the Hillbillies touched on an understanding of those moments, plus a feeling and a talent for humor, which did not really destroy, but which, as I say, it mentally it healed. Mm-hmm. And it was a kindly show and a funny show. That is my identification of the Hillbillies.
That was part of an interview with actor Buddy Ebsen from March of 1994. Buddy died of pneumonia in Torrance, California on July 6, 2003. He was 95. You can hear the full hour-long interview with Buddy on my website at thestufffile.com. Click on Celebrity Audio Files, and you'll find the interview with Buddy and also interviews with others. They're all listed in alphabetical order, and you can play them right off the page.
You've just heard an exclusive excerpt from the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. To hear any or all of the full hour-long shows, visit thestufffile.com. Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's thestufffile.com. A presentation of Flying Fish Communications.